Hi, welcome to Monster Transmission. You're in Curt's Corner. Today we're going to go over how to install a torque converter on the Dodge 48RE. This happens to be actually a diesel application, so it's a little different than the regular ones, to where the converter is much larger, so it does not fit inside the bell housing all the way. So we're going to go through the install procedure on the converter on putting it on this 48RE. So here we have the diesel converter. It's a very large converter, and it'll take at least 2, maybe 3 quarts of fluid. So you want to pour some fluid in here into the converter prior to installation onto the transmission. So we let the fluid settle down in the converter, and then we're going to lift it and slide it right here on the input shaft. This area of the shaft actually applies the lockup clutch. Then you have the input shaft splines, which goes in the back part of the converter, and then we actually have the stator, pump stator, that will keep the converter aligned. And then further in, you actually have the pump gears, the pump drive gears, and it has 2 teeth, 2 tabs, and they actually line up into these slots on the converter. The pump gears themselves slide in between this area on the converter. Okay, so if you don't install the converter correctly and the gears are on top of this, obviously when you tighten the bell housing up, you'll break those 2 tabs off, and obviously you will not have any pump pressure because the pump is not rotating, creating the hydraulic pressure of the transmission. So you want to ensure that you grease this area first. You've added some fluid, and you're going to install it right here on these splines and slide it straight in. And be careful not to disrupt the seal on the front of the transmission, because there is a spring on that seal. If you bang that seal too hard, you can knock the spring off, and then the seal will not squeeze around this hub of the converter and seal. So it'll leak immediately after you install the transmission. So we're now going to lift this converter, slide it here on the front of the input shaft and on the pump stator of the transmission. Now it's the initial part of the input shaft. You're going to rotate it clockwise as you apply pressure, pushing it into the transmission, and that will let it slide down on the input shaft, like so. And then you want to keep rotating it clockwise and pushing in for it to go all the way into the pump gears. So there was basically 2 very distinctive clunks as you feel it going in. One, that's the spline of the input shaft going into the converter, and then it's straddling the pump gears going into the center. And now to verify this is all the way in on the converter, if you measure from the level portion of the bell housing to the top of the mounting pad, it should be about 3/4 of an inch. It's exactly there. Once this is installed and you go to lift this up to mount it to the engine, on the diesel engine, and you put the bell housing bolts through, you want to start the bolts evenly, pulling it up to the engine block. But as you pull it up, make sure that this converter still spins free, and it'll pull it up to the flywheel. So if you notice the flywheel is concave, it's curved, and it's going towards the torque converter. So this is how the flywheel will look installed on the unit. So this will actually curve in to the starter area to line up with the flywheel, the ring gear on the flywheel, to turn the engine over to start the vehicle. This actually, you see this ring gear is almost even with the edge of the bell housing. So you want to make sure that once the transmission is tight to the engine block, that you can still rotate the converter. Okay, there's an access panel on the diesels on the bottom here, and you can rotate from the bottom this flywheel, and you can rotate it to the opening of one of the stud holes. And when you do that, I would line them up, start them all by hand, and pull them down quite a bit, but do not tighten them until you have all 6 bolts in, and then you would tighten the bolts all the way down. So that's how you install a converter on the 48RE, and I'll show you what can happen if it is not properly installed, how it fits into the pump, and what damage it can cause if it's not properly installed. This is the diesel pump assembly. So we'll pull the pump stator out. This is the part that fits right in the center part of the converter and locks it in. Okay. Now this is the area where the pump gears are. There's 2 pump gears, and this the center gear is the one that has the two tabs I was talking about. Those two tabs line up with the converter here, so it'll fit in this pattern. So when you rotate the converter back and forth, you may hear this. That means you see the play or the slot between the gear and the outer converter hub. Okay, that's what that is. If you install it improperly and the gears are on top of here, obviously the converter can't be in all the way. And as you tighten the bell housing, you'll crush and break these two tabs off this gear. And that obviously will jam those gears into the housing itself. It'll jam that right into the stator housing. And it will destroy this area of the pump. That's what can happen if you don't install the converter correctly. So be careful when you install the converter. Make sure after it's installed, you can rotate it left and right. You can hear it, that clanging. And that again, that is the two teeth riding in the front hub of the input hub of the converter. If you have any further questions on any of our transmissions here at Monster, or how to install or disassemble on any transmission, feel free to give us a call, 1-800-708-0087. Talk to you then.